Hey, hey, hey. Welcome back to another Out of This World story from Mr. Fictionality. Stark and Forks, a symphony of rain and revelation. In a world where technology and secrets merge, billionaire genius Tony Stark decides to escape his alcoholic slump and overcome his demons on his own by moving to the small town of Forks, Washington, to regain his health and focus on development. Chapter 1. The stark contrast. The incessant drizzle of Forks, Washington, was a welcome change for Tony Stark. The constant, melancholic patter against the roof of his newly purchased, albeit modest, cabin offered a stark contrast to the cacophony of his life in Malibu. Alcohol, once his solace, had become his tormentor, a constant companion whispering promises of oblivion. He needed a reset, a reboot of his mind and soul, far away from the glittering distractions of his world. Forks, with its perpetual gloom and quietude, felt like the perfect sanctuary. Tony had traded his sleek, state-of-the-art labs for a rickety workshop nestled behind the cabin. The damp air was a constant reminder of the change, but also a peculiar source of inspiration. His mind, free from the pressures of Stark Industries and the ghosts of his past, began to hum with fresh ideas. He found himself drawn to the raw power of nature, the subtle hum of the rain, the way the mist curled around the trees. It was primal, intoxicating, and strangely comforting. His foray into the town's social scene, however, was less idyllic. A local party, a rare occurrence in the perpetually damp town, proved to be a baptism by fire. The air was thick with the scent of damp earth and teenage angst. As Tony, clad in a surprisingly subdued, albeit waterproof, jacket, surveyed the scene, a surge of unfamiliar self-consciousness washed over him. He was the outsider, the billionaire genius with a touch of melancholic charm in a town where everyone seemed to know each other and the latest gossip about the local sheep farmer. His eyes fell upon two figures standing apart from the crowd, their beauty an anomaly in the subdued setting. A girl, Bella Swan, with her ethereal beauty and melancholic eyes, and a boy, Edward Cullen, with an almost unnerving intensity in his golden gaze. They were the epitome of quiet elegance, a contrast to the boisterous chatter surrounding them. Drawn by a strange magnetism, Tony ambled towards them, a half-formed idea materializing in his mind. These two are the type of people who'd inspire my next masterpiece. Mind if I join you? He asked, a touch of his usual cocky charm filtering through his words. Bella, startled, looked up at him, her eyes wide with surprise. Edward's gaze, however, was like a piercing laser beam, unervingly intense. Sure, Bella replied, her voice soft and melodious. Before Tony could elaborate on his rather blunt observation, he felt a surge of awkwardness and blurted out, "This place is a bit quiet. Maybe a few vampires would liven things up." The air crackled with tension. Edward's golden eyes flashed, a predatory glint replacing their earlier intensity. Suddenly, a cold wind swept through the room, extinguishing the flickering candles and plunging the room into near darkness. A chilling silence descended, punctuated only by the distant rumble of thunder. Tony felt a prickle of unease, a sense that something incredibly powerful was unfolding before him. In the darkness, Bella gasped, fear momentarily erasing the calmness from her features. Edward's hand shot out, his fingers grazing her cheek, his touch radiating an unnatural heat. "Don't ever." Edward's voice was a low growl, each word laced with warning. "Speak of such things again, Mr. Stark." A wave of icy air washed over Tony, leaving him momentarily breathless. He felt a raw, visceral power emanating from Edward, a force that defied explanation. It was then that Tony understood something was profoundly, terrifyingly different about these people. The lights flickered back on, revealing a scene frozen in time. Edward, his face an inscrutable mask, stood beside Bella, who was visibly trembling. The party guests, seemingly oblivious to the shift in the atmosphere, resumed their conversation. But Tony knew something had changed. He had stumbled upon a secret, a hidden layer of reality he never imagined existed. Forks, he realized, was far more complex than he initially thought. Chapter 2: Bella's Enigma. The encounter at the party had sparked a whirlwind of curiosity within Tony. He wanted to understand the phenomenon he had witnessed, to unravel the mystery behind Edward and Bella. He was no stranger to enigmas. His life had been a constant exploration of the unknown, of pushing the boundaries of science and technology. But this was different. This was a puzzle shrouded in a strange, almost supernatural aura. He found himself drawn to Bella, her gentle nature a stark contrast to the intensity he sensed in Edward. Their interactions were hesitant at first, but Tony's natural charm and genuine curiosity soon broke down the walls of her reserve. He discovered that she was a fascinating enigma, a girl who seemed to exist on the fringes of reality. One rainy afternoon, as Tony tinkered with a new prototype in his workshop, Bella stopped by, a shy smile gracing her lips. "I wanted to show you something," she mumbled, her cheeks flushing slightly. She led him to a secluded part of her property, a small clearing hidden behind a thicket of ancient trees. In the center was a strange contraption, a makeshift device that hummed with a low, ethereal energy. Thin wires connected to several crystals that pulsed with a soft, inner light. "What is this?" Tony inquired, his curiosity piqued. "It's an experiment," Bella said, her voice soft and hesitant. "I've been studying the unusual weather patterns in Forks. The rain, the mist, they seem to have a strange influence on things." She explained how she had been experimenting with natural phenomena, trying to harness the peculiar energy that seemed to permeate the town. She demonstrated how the device could manipulate the electrical charge in the air, creating small, localized bursts of energy. The demonstration was impressive, showcasing a proficiency in physics beyond her years. Tony was fascinated. "This is incredible. You have a real talent for this, Bella. You have a natural aptitude for understanding the subtle energy patterns of Forks." Bella's eyes lit up with a mixture of pride and anxiety. She couldn't confess her true reason for fascination: the vampires, the Cullen family's secret existence. She hoped Tony wouldn't pry deeper into her experiments and their underlying motive, to understand and manipulate their world. Meanwhile, unknown to Bella, a darker cloud was brewing over Forks. A malevolent figure was approaching, a vampire hunter named James, who smelled the scent of vampires in the air and found his way to the small town. Chapter 3: The Hunter's Shadow. The arrival of James, a ruthless vampire hunter with a chillingly focused demeanor, sent a ripple of unease through Forks. Initially, the locals were unaware of the threat, but Tony, with his military background and heightened intuition, sensed the shift in the atmosphere. It was the same instinct that had kept him alive in countless dangerous situations. He started noticing subtle changes, a strange tension in the air, a sense of lurking danger that permeated the usually tranquil town. One evening, while working on his latest invention, a miniature energy shield inspired by Bella's experiments, Tony's radar picked up a strange energy signature approaching his cabin. He quickly deactivated his work and stepped out to see a tall, imposing figure with an unnervingly sharp glare and a crossbow strapped to his back. "Who are you? And what are you doing in my property?" Tony asked in a low, warning tone. "I'm James," the vampire hunter announced, a hint of cruel amusement in his voice. "And I'm looking for someone. I've heard rumors of vampires lurking in this town." The air crackled with tension. Tony instantly understood the danger. He recognized the fanaticism in James's eyes, the same cold determination he had seen in many ruthless soldiers in his past. "If you're referring to the Cullens, then you're in the wrong place. They are not a threat to anyone," Tony declared, placing himself in a protective stance. "Oh, but they are," James retorted, a sinister smile stretching across his lips. "They're creatures that need to be eradicated from this earth, and I'm the one who will make sure that happens." Tony knew that he couldn't simply ignore James's threat. These were not just ordinary humans. They were beings with an incredible power, which was clear in the events that took place throughout town. He knew that it was his duty, a responsibility spurred both by his sense of justice and his innate protective instincts, to protect those who couldn't protect themselves. Chapter 4: A Jealous Heart and a Forged Alliance. As days turned into weeks, Tony found himself increasingly drawn to Bella. They spent hours together, discussing science, technology, and the mysteries of Fork's peculiar energy. Tony, for the first time in years, felt a flicker of genuine joy, a sense of purpose he hadn't experienced since before his world had crumbled beneath the weight of his past. Edward, however, was not pleased. He watched from the shadows, a storm brewing within his golden eyes. Jealousy, a powerful and unfamiliar emotion, gnawed at him. He observed their interactions, a growing suspicion creeping into his mind. Tony's sudden appearance, his technological prowess, and his growing closeness to Bella were all disturbing factors that fueled his paranoia. Edward began to question Tony's intentions. Was he a threat to Bella? Was he exploiting her for his own purposes? He dismissed the idea of Tony being a possible ally and saw him as a dangerous intruder in his and Bella's fragile world. His protective instincts toward Bella were heightened by the constant threat of James and his desire to be the only one with a chance to keep her safe. One night, under a blanket of starless sky, Edward confronted Tony. "What is your fascination with Bella?" he asked, his voice laced with a barely controlled anger. Tony, taken aback by the sudden hostility, replied calmly, "I find her fascinating. She has a unique intelligence, a genuine thirst for knowledge. She is a wonderful person, and I enjoy her company." "Don't play innocent with me, Stark," Edward hissed. "I've seen the way you look at her. I know what you are capable of." "What do you mean by that?" Tony asked, a hint of frustration creeping into his voice. "I mean, you're a danger to her," Edward snarled. "You are a world of technology, weapons, and chaos, and you're attempting to drag her into a dangerous game." The tension between them was palpable, a clash of wills and ideologies. Tony, however, was not intimidated. He had faced far more formidable foes in his life. "I'm not a threat to Bella," he declared, his voice firm. "I'm protecting her, just like you are. But I won't let you intimidate me with threats. We are in this together, or we are both in danger." Edward, momentarily taken aback, studied Tony's face. He saw strength and determination in those steel-gray eyes, a reflection of his own unwavering resolve when it came to protecting Bella. For the first time, a grudging respect began to blossom between the two opposing forces. Chapter 5: The Clash of Worlds. Tony, driven by a desire to protect Bella and the town from James, decided to build a system of defense. He poured his energy into creating devices that could counter the vampire's abilities. He built electromagnetic pulses designed to disrupt vampire senses, infrared scopes that could pierce through darkness, and sonic weapons that would repel them with sound. Edward, however, was deeply concerned. He understood the danger of technology's untamed power. The consequences of using such powerful devices against beings like himself were unpredictable. He knew that this could lead to unintended consequences, perhaps even destroying their delicate balance and forks. "Tony," Edward pleaded, his voice tinged with despair. "This is dangerous. You don't understand what you're doing. You're creating weapons that could harm us all." "I'm trying to protect everyone, Edward," Tony countered, his voice firm. "And I will not stand by and watch as James hunts down innocent people. There is a line between protecting yourself and hunting others with no purpose for their safety. You are all in danger." The conflict between Tony's reliance on technology and Edward's innate abilities reached its peak. Their differing views on the best way to handle their predicament created an ever-widening rift. Chapter 6: A Universal Weapon and a Personal Threat. As Tony worked on his arsenal, Bella, with her innate understanding of Fork's energy, made a groundbreaking discovery. She realized that Tony's experiments, specifically the sonic weaponry, could be used to create a universal vulnerability for vampires. She uncovered a connection between the peculiar energy patterns of Forks and the vampires' reliance on the surrounding energy for their existence. She rushed to Tony, her excitement palpable. "Tony, I think I've discovered a way to target them specifically. We can use the energy in specific frequencies to repel them. It could be used as a weapon against them. All of them." Tony was instantly intrigued. He delved into the data she had gathered, his mind racing with possibilities. "If this is true, Bella, it could be a game changer. It could be the key to defeating them." However, the implications of this discovery were far-reaching. They realized that the energy pulsations which would repel the vampires could also fatally harm them. Edward, initially shocked and hesitant, couldn't deny the possibility of the breakthrough. But he was also terrified of the possibility that this could harm him. "Tony, this is too dangerous," Edward pleaded, his voice filled with an urgency that betrayed his fear. "This could end us." The tension in the room was palpable. Bella, torn between her desire to help and her love for Edward, felt her heart pound in her chest. Tony, caught in the middle, understood the risks involved, but he also understood the severity of the threat posed by James and the potential for a wider crisis if they failed to act. Chapter 7. The Alliance Forged in Danger. The confrontation with James, a relentless hunter, finally arrived. Tony, using his network of sensors and listening devices throughout the town, tracked down James's location. He knew the time had come to finalize his weapon, to create the trap to finally disable him. James, in his delusional pursuit, had stalked Bella, ignoring their warnings. He had targeted her and her unique connection to the energy patterns of the town. He was a man driven by an irrational fear and hate for anything that stood outside of his human understanding. Tony had installed a variety of advanced technology in the town to track James, as well as protect Bella. He had set up energy generators to emit various frequencies, preparing to repel James. Meanwhile, Edward and Bella were hiding near Tony's cabin, prepared for any potential attack. The moment James arrived near the cabin to confront Bella, Tony set the trap in motion. The emitted frequency waves were aimed at the surrounding area. James, caught in the middle of the trap, felt his senses overwhelmed and his body began to be repelled by the energy surge. It was both a defense and a lethal weapon, a perfect balance of the new energy frequencies. In the chaos, James made a desperate attempt to escape the energy waves. He tried attacking Edward, hoping to use the vampire as a human shield. But Edward was ready, and his speed and natural abilities were impossible for the hunter to anticipate. He quickly dodged the attack and retaliated, pushing James back into the pulsating energy frequencies. Tony watched from the sidelines, his heart pounding in his chest as James's power lessened. He had finally found the vulnerability, the weakness of the hunters and the vampires, a weapon that could be used both to defend and to destroy. But in the heat of the battle, Tony saw a profound change in Edward. His eyes were filled with a newfound sense of understanding, a clarity and a calmness he had never observed in him before. It was as if something inside him had shifted, the burden of his existence lightening. Chapter 8. A New Path, a New Hope. The aftermath of the confrontation brought a sense of relief to Forks, but also a profound sense of change. James, defeated and wounded, was forced to retreat. The town had been spared from his fanaticism, but the fight was only beginning. Tony realized that his technological solution, while effective against James, was a double-edged sword. It posed a threat to the vampires, including Edward, whose existence was intertwined with the very energy he was attempting to manipulate. One rainy evening, as the town slowly returned to its usual quietude, Tony found himself in a conversation with Edward. The initial animosity had dissolved, replaced by a reluctant respect. Edward, having observed Tony's abilities and the potential of his technologies, saw a path to a new future. "Tony," Edward confided, his voice subdued, "I see now that what you're doing isn't about destruction, it's about discovery. I see a possibility of a better life." Over the following days, Tony and Edward worked together. Tony shared his knowledge, his understanding of the energy patterns, and showed Edward how technology could be adapted to their unique abilities. They experimented with creating artificial energy sources that could sustain Edward and his family without relying on blood. Edward, driven by a newfound hope, embraced this new understanding. He recognized the limitations of his past existence, the unquenchable thirst that had driven him for centuries. Tony, in his turn, started understanding the importance of coexistence, of harmony within the natural and supernatural realms. They created a synthetic energy source, a technological adaptation that resonated with the natural forces of Forks. This synthetic energy would eventually replace their need for blood, paving a path for a new type of existence for vampires. Chapter 9. The Forks Revolution. Tony's innovative solution, while successful, didn't end the conflict entirely. The news of James's defeat and the technology that was used to defeat him spread rapidly among the community of hunters. They began to believe that Tony was behind the destruction of their comrade. A new wave of hunters arrived in Forks, driven by a blind rage and a lust for revenge. They attempted to attack Tony and his newfound allies, believing that he was a threat to the natural order. Tony, using his network of sensors and advanced weaponry, managed to counter the assault. He used his technology to set a series of traps, and with Edward and his family's help, they skillfully repelled the oncoming attacks. The climax of the conflict came when Tony activated a large energy pulsation device that he had installed in the mountains. The device emitted powerful energy waves, creating a large barrier that repelled the hunters with immense force. They were baffled by the extent of Tony's technological power. The hunters, utterly defeated, were forced to retreat back to their world. Forks was finally free from the threat of fanatic hunters. Chapter 10. The Choice of a Lifetime. After the tumultuous events of the past few months, Tony faced a crossroads. He had created a new path for the vampires, a technological revolution that had changed their existence. He had successfully defended Forks, a small town that had captured his heart. But his world was still out there, the world of Stark Industries, of high-tech advancements and never-ending challenges. He had grown accustomed to the quiet life of Forks, the constant rain, and the unique community that surrounded him. He had found a sense of purpose he had never felt before. He had fallen in love with Bella, and Edward, though initially a source of conflict, had become a close friend. He spent days deliberating, questioning his own desires and the nature of his existence. He realized that true strength didn't lie in his technological prowess or his ingenious inventions. It lay in the bonds of love and friendship, in the ability to accept and embrace diversity, even the supernatural. One evening, under a sky tinged with the hues of a fading sunset, Bella found him sitting on the porch of his cabin, his gaze fixed on the horizon, a melancholic expression on his face. "You need to decide, Tony," Bella said softly, her voice filled with an unspoken understanding. "Will you stay or will you go back?" Tony turned to her, his eyes filled with a mixture of emotions. "I don't know, Bella. A part of me craves the excitement of my old life, the challenge of pushing the boundaries of technology. But another part of me feels truly at home here in Forks with you and Edward." Bella smiled, and Edward walked closer, looking at Tony with genuine affection in his eyes. "You have a lot to offer, Tony. You have a great heart, and you've changed our existence for the better. We need you, and we are happy to have you in our life." Tony realized that his path had changed. It was no longer about technology or fame or fortune. It was about love and friendship, about accepting the unexpected and embracing the beautiful complexity of life. He had found his purpose in the unlikeliest of places, in a small town nestled amidst rain and shadows. He smiled, a genuine, heartfelt smile. "I'm staying, Bella," he said. "I'm staying here in Forks with you and Edward. We'll face any challenge that comes our way, together." And as the rain continued to fall, a new chapter began in Forks, a chapter where technology and mystery, love and friendship thrived in perfect harmony. The future was uncertain, The path ahead was filled with unforeseen obstacles. But for the first time in years, Tony Stark felt truly alive, truly at peace, in the heart of a small town that had become his unlikely sanctuary. Join us today on Mr. Fictionality. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the notification button so you don't miss our next video. See you soon.